David.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me again today.
It's wonderful to be here. We were meditating and I kept hearing, the kingdom of heaven is within you and there is no outcome. And I just had to laugh at that last part. And there is no outcome. There really has never been a coming out. It was impossible to come out from heaven. An outcome is something that seems just important to the ego or to the world, but there are no outcomes and there is no outcoming from heaven. It could be the last question that falls away. What is the outcome? Which seems important in this world. If you make an investment, what is the outcome? If there's a sporting event, what is the outcome? If there's a relationship, what is the outcome? If you do an experiment in science, what is the outcome? No wonder it's called by Shakespeare, much to do about nothing.
Even if you wake up, what is the outcome? What is the benefit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different spiritualities talking about degrees of enlightenment and partial enlightenment and personal enlightenment and all these different, making more concepts of nothing.
Yeah, I was just sitting here, like what came to my mind was differences and sameness. You know, our friend Lisa Cairns just arrived to visit our community, and she's this clear channel or articulator of, you know, the truth in a way that is very direct and is very consistent, but there is no real difference in terms of, you know, it seems like in form, the way that one person approach anything and other person, they approach things are different, but really, like, differences are not really the essence, you know, and in form you can see everything is different. The reason I think about it is also because this movie Giver that we watched a couple of days ago, what really struck me when I was watching the movie was it kind of reminded me of where I grew up, China. Like, it was a little, very early in my childhood, I was kind of experiencing the attempt to bring sameness in form, and I trust there is a deep awareness probably that is the truth. There is no sameness and we're all equal, and yet to bring the attempt to bring the truth to illusion and to achieve the sameness in form, or to achieve anything in form, to, you know, think that is the outcome or that is a goal, and there is no work, you know, it doesn't work, because that's not where the truth is and where the correction is. And as I was watching the movie, that's really the insight that I got was, you know, there was this one side of strengthening or emphasizing individuality and differences, and then the swing of the other extreme is the emphasis of the sameness and yet in form. Everybody has to be the same, and neither is the answer, neither is the solution. And what the Course is teaching is to bring the illusion to choose and not to attempt to achieve anything really at the level of form. And that's where the attention, if that's where the attention is put, then that's become a distraction and a trap.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just the realization of that there is no sameness achievable through specific forms or uniqueness achievable, then it just offers such a stillness, because then there's no effort put at conforming or being, showing your colors and being, like some people would say, an individual, magnificent, unique expression of God. What if there are no individual, unique expressions of God? It sounds good, but then you look closer at it and you say it's the individual part at the beginning, the unique part, that, expression of God, yeah, that's wonderful, but it's the individual, unique part that is not achievable.
Mm-hmm. Right. And even consistency in form, to try to achieve some kind of standard, any kind of standard in form is a restriction, really.
Yeah.
It's actually holding on to a judgment. It's a supporting some kind of judgment that some kind of form is better or is more advanced or is more helpful than the other. And that can be a very helpful stepping stone, but in the end, that has to be laid aside as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just aware of just with us and everyone in the world and the whole community, there's just a gleeful, joyful, bursting expression of all this joy and happiness. I noticed it was almost like it could have been like to this morning could have been like a Fred Astaire, Ginger Roger movie. People just floating through the halls and dancing around, and a buzz of joy, not for anything particular, it's just a state of mind, not tied into anything. There's no sense of like future goals or trying to accomplish something, really devoid of ambition, in a most glorious way, just vibrant and shining and no ambition for anything. All of us even sitting around meditating in little tripod, meditating in the middle, just this feeling of that connectedness, togetherness, without all the ideas that there has to be outcomes or there has to be rituals to maintain something. Just absolutely effortless.
Yeah. And then that goes the other way, like also nothing is evil either. There's nothing to achieve because nothing is really wholly in form, but there's nothing evil in form either. We had this friend recently raised this topic with us that in particular the evil object is words. Like that he was talking to me about how language and words block his awakening, and for that part I kind of can understand where he's coming from, but then he went on saying that it actually is a crime or a sin to talk about anything, especially awakening. It is actually the worst crime you can ever commit to human race. So in that, there seems to be a very strong opinion about what the language and word can do. Like there seems to be a power that's given. Well, this is not the power that is glorious, but it's still some kind of power that's dark, that they can create a very negative effect or something.
Yeah, it's comforting to think that everything made by the ego can be used by the spirit, really to let go of the need for anything made by the ego, or really to let go of the ego. Like the old waffle commercial, Lego my ego. Let go of my ego. She's like, oh, you didn't hear that one growing up. But that's the stuff we were raised with. Let go my ego. even then the Spirit was coming through to us and like saying, you're going to remember this when you're 56 years old, and you're going to say, wow, thank you. But it's this sense of that inspired words really draw us beyond the words, because words are symbols of symbols twice removed from reality, but the words aren't the sin. In the end, you go past the idea of sin. First, maybe it's retranslated to error, and then in the correction, then the error is gone and never was. And it's very joyful, but it's just the temptation of the ego to point to anything in form and say this is a sin or that's a sin. The old definition of sin was it's like a black mark on your soul. Wow, what a trip. Pointing a finger at someone or something or some group or some practice and saying, that's a sin. Now, we have a reinterpretation. It's just an error to be corrected, and even more correct, the error has been corrected. So there's cause for rejoicing.
So what he was saying, like part of it is that talking about awakening can delay or can block the awakening process. Do you think it's possible?
Well, I think it's really individualized in the sense that if there came a point where your mind was just sinking into the stillness and there was the ego tried to use the words or the talking about as a delay from yielding into that experience, then in that sense, you could say it could be a tactic or a delay maneuver. And that's something just to be aware of, because really, A Course in Miracles tells us that truth cannot be described or explained, but only experienced. So that's some strong words about truth, that it's a state of mind and it's beyond the words and the descriptions, and yet the Spirit just uses those, as part of a gentle waking. So you might say the right use of words is the right use of the body, is the right use of houses and cars, and the right use of the internet, and the right use of phones. It's the purpose for which they're put, to put to use, that's the most important thing. So really the question is, what is it for? It's not to talk about a thing or a set of words and say that the words in and of themselves are evil. It would, if you said words are evil, then that would mean, especially words of awakening or words of enlightenment, then that would mean all the scriptures, which are so helpful as guidelines, not in ends of themselves, but just as guidelines. It would be negating the scriptures. So there goes the Bhagavad Gita and the Gospels, there goes the I Ching, there goes, the Vedas, there goes all of these, Khalil Gibran's writings, and Rumi's, there goes Rumi's poetry. I mean, most people would say Rumi's poetry it's transcendent. It's pointing beyond the words.
Yes.
But imagine somebody telling you Rumi's words are a sin. That it starts to get a bit absurd.
Yeah.
Or Khalil Gibran's words are a sin, or
Yeah.
Jesus's words are a sin. That's it's, you have to see how laughable
Yes.
that is.
Yes, that experience, because this morning I was having a little brief talk with David. I was saying, I'm in that like emptiness again, and when I'm in that emptiness, it's like so total and ultimate, and it feels like there's impossible to grasp onto a thought, to formulate a talk. And the temptation, the thing is, it is just that emptiness, really. But the temptation is to put that into a timeline and say, I will never talk again. And I was like form some kind of conclusion about I, really, and to still hold on to this I. But it's like, in that experience, that's the ego's most used trick, I think, is to put something and drag it onto a timeline, saying, forming a conclusion about the future or about this individual, and really to support the existence of this I, really. But in that experience, anything comes out, I can't say they are divine or evil. They're just, they come, they go, they're not really under my control. And it's tempting to say, I do not want to talk, but that is not even true. The real, I feel like the real forgiving state of mind is to say that everything is allowed, everything. Words are allowed and silence is allowed, and everything is equally acceptable in this moment, and we just see what arises, and there's no one to judge,
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I feel sometimes the word comes to mind, simultaneity, that it's, so to speak, everything's happening at once. And I think, 2,000 years ago there wasn't a word simultaneity, but I think Jesus, when he said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, he was bringing it all back to this presence, the I amness, and saying basically it's all together. Ultimately, I think there's an experience that there are no beginnings and endings. Those were outcomes. Heaven is eternity, so and heaven doesn't have an outcome, and you don't ever come out from heaven. The Course in Miracles, everyone's famous with Jesus' teaching in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is within you. But I really like how he says in the Course, the word within is unnecessary. The kingdom of heaven is you. It's talking not about the personality self, obviously, but around the spirit self, the Christ self. The word within is unnecessary. So if everything is just simultaneous, we'll say, in this world, and then you stay and you live in that, then you're carefree with everything of the world. The sameness comes from the perspective, not from the objects, because there aren't any objects. There's no outcome. It's impossible. It's impossible to pull a glass of water out of the cosmos and delineate it by a name, by a shape, by a texture, by an appearance. It's impossible, it's impossible to pull it out of the tapestry. The simultaneous tapestry is what the quantum field is all about. It just is the quantum field, and there's nothing there's nothing that comes out from the quantum field, even though there's a whole branch now of science, quantum physics, that studies, waves and particles, and and that's, again, it gets into theory. But the quantum field, the field of unified energy, is really what the forgiven world is, from Course in Miracles terms, or the happy dream, or true perception. So I think it's very relaxing to see that there are no outcomes. Never has been, never will be. People say, that sounds very abstract. Well, so be it. Life is abstract. Life is not defined. It's actually hard to hang on to definitions. And people have asked me too, why did you invite Lisa Cairns to come? She's not a Course in Miracles teacher, or this and this, and it's like, really, it's time to lay aside this ideas of theologies and pathways and so forth.
Differences.
Groups. There's an experience available, ever available, and that's what it's all about.
Yes.
And it's not about the forms, and it's precious, because you can be that, you can yield into that and see how glorious it is, and it has nothing to do with the forms. I was thinking how simple it is too. I remember back in a day when people came to an agreement, even in terms of human beings, they would sometimes smile, and that was an agreement, or they would nod, and that was agreement, or they would shake hands. back before there were contracts and prenuptials and huge policies with disclaimers and pages and pages and pages for a simple transaction, people would smile at each other or nod. If there's a nodding, there's an agreement. Like, imagine how simple that is. Now in the days of law and legalities, and I was joking about that the other day now with Course in Miracles, radio shows and conferences and everything, and now it's starting to get into contracts, and it's like, what happened to the I give you my word? What happened to the smile, the glance, the nod? What happened to the shaking of hands? That's what two people used to do when they would agree to something. They didn't need a pen. They just shook hands, and it was so. And all that reminds me of the teaching in A Course in Miracles. Trust would settle every problem now. If you have fear, then complexity enters immediately. And handshakes are gone, and verbal agreements are gone, and smiles and nods of the head are all gone. It's almost like that's like seen as child's play, Nowadays it's just so funny with people getting married and signing prenuptial agreements. It really emphasizes the contractual nature of the marriage institution as the world sees it. Okay, we'll check. My lawyers have drawn up the papers and yours, and now let's come together, and then the lawyers kind of work out a prenuptial agreement based on time, that there's two bodies coming together, and there's going to be whatever assets and whatever the world calls important. And it's all protectionism. And it was that one movie that Catherine Zeta-Jones did with George Clooney, Intolerable Cruelty or something like that. So funny, where they played it. He was a lawyer, and she seemed to be using it for financial gain, and then they both got involved and went round and round and round and round and poked fun. I think it was just such a comedy because it was poking fun at the whole world and the whole system of defense and attack and scheming and one-upsmanship and the whole thing. It was just a comedy. And to me, that's what a comedy really is. It just shows the foolishness and the nothingness of all that. Some of you remember, like Chauncey Gardner in Being There, when he's lived in this house pretty much as a gardener his whole life, and then the owner, the old man, dies, and the maid or the cook leaves, and then he's just left there, watching TV in some of the rooms with his little remote controls. But when the lawyer comes and says, what are you doing here? And he says, Louise will bring me my lunch. And it's a very simple life of the given. But then at some point they said, Mr. Gardner, are you wishing to make a claim? Because the lawyer's coming from a claim on the inheritance or claim on the house or some kind of relationship over the years or whatever. And he says, I don't know what a claim is. He doesn't know what a claim is. He doesn't know what an outcome is. In that Chauncey Gardner kind of state of mind in that movie, that's what's so amazing about the movie, is it's a teaching that there's a state of mind that doesn't, have an opinion. It doesn't have a desire. It's not seeking an outcome. It doesn't know what a claim is.
It doesn't understand the world.
No, it doesn't understand the world. And it's so yet taken care of.
Yeah.
So completely provided for, just being what it is, being there, It's just complete and whole in itself, just being there. That's the kingdom of heaven, that's the kingdom of heaven. It doesn't go out, and it has no outcome. It has no goals. It's shocking to the world What are your ambitions? I have none. Oh, shocking. What do you hope to accomplish? Nothing. Shocking. You surely must want to grow.
No.
No.
What contribution do you do to the society?
Yeah.
No.
Nothing. What have you contributed to society? Nothing. That's, people say it's either shocking or it's a farce. They're joking, they're pulling the legs and so on and so forth. No, there's really no pulling of legs even. It's not a joke.
Yeah.
It's the truth. And it's refreshing. You were saying you get some comments for your show.
Mm.
What a compliment. Refreshing, spontaneous, always new, never the same, never predictable. That's beautiful. That's really more describing a state of mind than even the show, but it's coming through
Yeah.
the show.
It is like everything is allowed, and there is no, no judgment or preference of one way or the other, and just in this total allowance, then everything reveals themselves.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about. This feeling I feel, this bursting joy of just this vastness, this vibrancy, this joy, this happiness. It cannot be contained, and ultimately it cannot be even structured. That's when there's schedules and so on and so forth. It's almost like playing with children's toys. Times and dates and appointments and structures and organizations.
You play this toy on Thursday afternoon. Every Thursday afternoon, and you play this one every Wednesday morning. It's just...
Yeah. That's why I like the Lego movie so much. At the beginning of the movie, everything is awesome. Everything is awesome when you're part of a team. There's still a bit of a push to it, but by the end of the movie, that was even transcended. It wasn't a ritualistic kind of a mantra. It was an expression of the heart.
Mm.
Everything is awesome.
Mm.
And I kind of had my own lyrics at the end of the movie. The Holy Spirit's like, everything is awesome. Everything is awesome when you know it's a dream. Everything is awesome. The team part is out of there, but the dream part, when you know it's a dream, when you're the dreamer of the dream, when it's all simultaneous, when it's all gloriously blended into one perception of the world, then it is awesome. It is fun.
Yeah.
But there's no pursuing anything, or like I'm going to Colorado tomorrow, and Lisa was asking Jason, Lisa Cairns was saying, well, so I saw you made a flyer, and he said, well, the team did, I just, and, oh, you've got a team, that's nice. Yeah, it's how it is with our mind, it's like so much love, and everything's just all for the same thing, and yet it's like, so what's the format, or what are we going to do? And he said, I don't know. And she said, that's good. That's what I tell people all the time. I don't know. It's back again, feeling comfortable enough of saying it, even speaking it. I don't know, because really you can't know anything about the world in form. That's actually the most honest statement that you can make. I don't know about the form.
Mm.
About who you are. In the end, know thyself. That's relationship with spirit, which is the only thing that's knowable. Everything else is unknowable. But to be relaxed enough to say, I don't know, or we'll see, or let's watch and see. That's fun. What's going to happen? I don't know, but let's watch. Let's enjoy.
Mm.
And we don't know anybody there either. Too a lot of the people that are hosting us and so forth. Do you know? No. You met them? No. Feels like in our hearts we feel the vibrancy, the love, the joy, like we've known them forever.
Yeah.
But in terms of form, no.
Yeah. And the thing is like this, knowing that the form is never the cause of anything, neither the cause of pleasure and joy or the cause of pain or suffering. So in that way, we're not to achieve the form, because that doesn't give anything or doesn't mean anything, but everything is done to be in that recognition. That recognition with Lisa comes here, like it just feels such a recognition of something that is completely beyond the form, and it's just, like recognizing who we are. And I remember even before we went to China the first time, you did a Skype call with a group of Chinese friends, maybe 2 years before we first went there. And there was this one mystic. She's really a mystic, and she was describing all these experiences and some frustration as well, because it's so out of the box and nobody in her family or a circle could understand. And there were a lot of judgment as well. And all you said was, I remember on that Skype call, you said, I look forward to seeing you in the eyes and recognize who we are together. That's all. That's your one answer to all these frustrations and description of the the mystic state. And that happened when we first visit, not really knowing, who she was, and she was the one on the call. And I just observed, from my perspective, I observed this deep recognition, just instant. That's really what everything is for, is just for us to stay in that connectedness and this recognition of who we are together, remembrance of that together.
I feel like we are honored and blessed in that way, in the sense that because it's such an amazing deep experience and presence, and it's not commercial, and it's not a commodity, it's not a product, and you can't really organize it, you can't market it or whatever. That I do remember that mostly about our first trip to China. I mean, I think we've been 4 times, but I do remember the first time that the 2 organizers, we just had to laugh, because they are so mystical in the sense of being devoted and unorganized, that it would be like putting the 2 most unlikely people in that position, but yet they were the ones that were the organizer. And then 100 people or whatever show up, and
they didn't even know that they need to collect money.
They were clueless.
So half of the people who were doing the retreat never paid, and because they were like mystics, and
people just came and went, and there was all these deep questions, and it was just so mystical. And the ones in charge, the organizers, were so clueless.
Yeah.
And we had so much fun, and it was so. It's like, that's how life is when it's directed by presence. You don't need a team of the best qualified,
No. And I remember we did that 5-day retreat first time in a hotel, and all the hotel staff came, bring teas and dessert in the meantime, and then they stayed and listened, and in the end they all called David teacher, they're all just hotel staffs.
I know. I saw the same woman that was pretty much just standing by the door. I guess that was her assignment the whole time for the hotel, just to stand by the door, and she just kept looking, and I would watch her out there, and she would be smiling and greeting us when we would come in, and standing by the door the whole time, and then at the end just this big smile. Like she just was so honored to be part of the whole experience, and like, wow, this is my job. I get to be by all these happy people and all this joy, I felt everything was so much love, and that has stayed with me, I'm just not a fan of organization, in the sense that it kind of covers over the vibrancy, because when you get into organization, when you get into structure, and when you get into commerce and reciprocity and whatever, it dulls. It covers over the vibrancy, and it in awareness, not in reality, but in awareness, it deadens the experience. It turns into a commodity. It turns into an exchange. It turns into the bottom, what was there money made, or what's the bottom line. In the commercial world, the bottom line is was there a profit or a loss? That's just not a question to presence. Presence doesn't see gain or loss. There's no motive. As people say, can't you mix the spirit and the laws of the world? No, you can't. You can't mix truth and illusion, and you can't mix the vibrancy of spirit with the timeline.
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw in the Giver, because growing up in China, early part of my childhood, I could still observe this almost this control that everything, like the society, or there should be no difference between each individual in all ways, like the way that the salary that you receive and the way you dress, the way it should be the same, and it's under the central control. And yeah, it just feels like it's kind of funny now for me, because that we are talking about sameness, but it's the other way around. In almost like in form, you're gonna have to give such a allowance that everything is the same, held in the mind. Not necessarily everything should be coming out exactly the same way.
Yeah, but that's all these misdirected attempts to try to bring about sameness. I think of growing up, there was the public schools, and then there was the private schools or the parochial schools, and it was very similar to like with China about the dress and trying to societal like bring the sameness in, whether it's through communism or socialism or in the case of wearing uniforms. The idea of uniforms are kind of uniform, one form. It's the attempt to unify the form through some kind of a form mechanism. So everyone, it's like conformity.
Yeah.
Conformity. I know in the Spanish language there's sin, which is without. Interesting word. Sin means without.
Mm-hmm.
And con is with. Conform, with form. Conformity, conform. You can see if you start to look at the languages, it's like trying to bring equality into form through kind of legislating. That's why we have affirmative action and all kinds of laws put in place, equal opportunities and so forth. But the attempt is to go for equality, not really seeing that it's only experienced in consciousness, in the mind, when you give up the judgments. But there is no conformity, there is no uniform, and that it's impossible. And that's why I love about the teaching, seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world. So simple. Really, ultimately it's simple, but to the ego it seems, it doesn't want that. It wants to, do it, try to do it in form. Even equality is a concept, it's still, you have to have duality or two to talk about equality. It's just another time concept. It's a reflection, we could say, a vague reflection of oneness. Which is the ultimate sameness, but, oneness can't be played out in specific forms. It has to allow for the quantum field, to allow for the merge in awareness, which is what healing is all about. But the ego is always trying to divide the pie up equally. It can make a whole game charade out of that.
It makes sense if you think that way, like it's trying to create a substitute for the qualities that is the reality, or that is heaven. Trying to bring heaven to this world and create this kind of qualities, and including love, which is the only reality. But then we create this substitute of human loves, or loving relationships. That becomes a substitute of what is true, so that we can just yeah, just trying to find satisfaction in these substitutes.
Yeah. That's the whole topic of the impossibility of interpersonal relationships. That's a whole...
You want to get into it?
Like, here goes all the dominoes, they just fall over. I mean, I think that's like an ideal of the world. It's like, it's the talk of interpersonal relationships where there's equality. So basically it's separate but equal. They don't, in the end you start to see that's impossible too. That in the end people, that's such a high aim in the world, is equality among people as a reflection. But then when you go deeper and deeper, you see that it's still part of the people addiction, thinking that people are people with private minds and private thoughts.
That's why it's really like this necessity to leave everything behind, to not really try to achieve anything, because we're really trying to achieve is this substitute for heaven. And to really know heaven, all of this attempt needs to be put aside and leave behind,
Yeah. And the message is that it really isn't hard. It's harder to keep it. It's harder to keep the substitute than to let it go. It seems, when people talk about the spiritual journey and the pathway, and it's so hard, it's actually reversed. It's easier to be who you are than to fight against it with substitutes and idols. To the mind that's addicted or seems to be entrenched in the idols, then truth seems like such a lofty goal or a lofty aspiration. If people say truth, they go, huh. Because there's no awareness of it. They speak about truth in a court of law. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You're supposed to say, I do, and swear on a Bible. But there's no awareness of what that means. To tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You have to be really in tune with Source for that. And it doesn't really mean anything, in the level of horizontal time. Because there is no truth in relativity. Relativity is a defense against the absoluteness of truth.
But when we just mentioned the interpersonal relationship and saying that is a substitute for heaven and for God, and letting it go, I don't know whether it's actually the difficulty is in letting it go, or is actually in wanting to let it go. Because if that is the only reality we know, if interpersonal relationship is the only love that people can feel, then there is no motivation to let it go.
No, it's more of an outgrowing, because if there's an attempt to let something go that's still desired, then it will just flip around in different patterns, and one is no better or worse than the other. It's really, outgrow is a better word.
Outgrow of interpersonal relationship.
Yeah. As you outgrow personal motives with anything and everything, then that just transfers eventually to relationships as well.
Mm.
And thank heavens for that too, because it's, there is dependencies, horizontal dependencies with those concepts, and they can't stand the light. They eventually have to fall. They of course are destined to be outgrown, because they don't have a validity or a reality. So then everything gets retranslated. Intimacy gets retranslated into an experience of presence, as the others are outgrown, as the other concepts are outgrown.
Mm.
It just transfers to all of perception.
Right. So it's not like it's a sacrifice that you will never have that, anymore, but more like you have that, but not necessarily dependent on a person to be around you, but you do feel that intimacy that you're yearning for.
Yeah, I was aware of that. Like I'd seen a video of Lisa Cairns talking about that too, and of having this boyfriend, non-dualistic teacher boyfriend, and there was a part she was saying today when she was in the hot tub talking to me, she was just saying there was a part that occasionally would say, I need to leave, I need to get out. But another part that was like, everything's taken care of. I'm completely provided. I don't even care or know about a world living in the jungle, literally with this man. And then when he said, get out, it was like, oh my gosh, it was a shock initially, but then as she just went to Bali and just was open, oh yeah, this is life, this is all experience. It's you could feel the vibrancy coming again. It just showed that loss was a trick. That it's never, you can never really lose anything. But it's to the ego that somehow associates intimacy with bodies or with interpersonal relationships. That's the trick right there. That is the trick. And then when you go past that, when you outgrow that, then you go, wow, a whole new world is there in perception.
So in experience, normally when people fall in love, at the beginning there is this mystical kind of feeling of and there is this experience almost like you're not just in love with one person. Your heart is open and you're almost like you're in love with everything. But somehow that will change. That kind of feeling will change. So would you say that experience is a tap into this divine love, but the association with this person in front of you eventually somehow that make it not really consistent in awareness?
Yeah, it's like any kind of like attachment or, it's like the mind wants to conclude something about something, and even to say, no. I mean, that used to be a thing I would look at, this whole idea of in and out of a relationship. It's no different than an outcome from the kingdom of heaven. If the kingdom of heaven is love and is all, then you can't come out from it. And you can never really come out of that love. Then this in and out thing has to be, it's dualistic, it has to be part of the trick. So this falling in love or falling out of love and all the things, that those are just descriptions of the impossible.
Okay. But I just want to say that there's like experiential wise, it does seems to that like when you first fall in love, that kind of feeling. I mean, if you're in that 24/7 forever and ever, then it's easy for the mind to understand there is no in and out. But the experience seems to justify this category, like you don't stay in that when you are not in a relationship. And it seems like at the beginning of a relationship, that kind of magical feeling happens or something.
Yeah, the heart opens
and
it's expansive and so forth.
But what you're saying is that I can understand that, the mental box is something that you can in and out in terms of relationship as a situation, as a concept that you can go in and out. But what are you saying that experience is gonna be the same with like forever and ever, and not really you don't come out of that?
No, it's just at the end you look at this whole thing of beginnings and endings. That was something I looked at, like just having an honest question, like when does a relationship start? and when does it end? It's these, again, startings and endings are time concepts. And as long as relationships tied up with time concepts or linear time, then that's the trick. In the end, Jesus saying, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." That presence, he's just saying, "I'm everything," and in that sense, the beginnings and ends stop. Really, time and eternity can't coexist. It's eternity is a word, but it stands for no beginning, no ending, everlasting. It's abstraction, and then everything of time, including the beginnings and endings. It's like a riddle that can never be solved. It's an impossible situation, the situation of linear time and beginnings and endings, and so therefore there's no fixing it. You can't really fix an impossible situation. Sometimes people will say to me, how do you end fear? How do you bring an ultimate end to fear, or bring an end to guilt? Or the most common one I get is, how do you stop judging? How do you stop judging? And I answer a question with a question. I say, how do you stop a runaway freight train? We'll say you're at a mountain and it's the train tracks and the train is run away. How do you stop it? Well, the answer is you don't. And in the end, you don't stop judgment. You have to see that there never was judgment, that it never started. You see how frustrating it is when you hear the human being say, how do I stop judging? So when they read Jesus in Sermon on the Mount, and they read Jesus say, judge not, they see that as a prescription for human beings, for the human race. Jesus, they say, Jesus was given a prescription. Is that like a doctor gives you a prescription to be well? Christ is saying, here, listen, human race, here. Got some words for you. Judge not. Here you go. Now here, apply that. They see judge not as a prescription, but it's actually a description of the forgiven world. There is no judge. There never has been. You see, there's a big difference between trying to stop something that you believe you're doing and seeing that you aren't the thinker of the thoughts.
Yes.
You are not the judge.
Yeah.
You've never ever had a single judgmental thought ever in your eternal life, which God gave you. You see, there's a big difference. The frustration of, the spiritual journey is so difficult, because why? Because Jesus said, judge not. I'm trying to do that prescription. I've had many refills. Over thousands of years, I keep going back. Yeah, I'll take another refill of judge not, please. The physician says, you still haven't got that one? No. It's my 2.3 trillionth refill. I'll take another judge not, please. Head down. Because how do you stop a runaway freight train? That's it. You don't. But you don't need to stop the runaway freight train, because God didn't create the runaway freight train. God didn't create judgment. God doesn't judge. Oneness doesn't even have a clue what judgment is. There is no duality to judge. There's nothing to compare in oneness. So you don't have to stop the runaway freight train. You simply have to see the impossibility of the freight train. That's what forgiveness is. Forgive your brother for what he did not do. Forgive your mind for what it did not do. It is not a judge. It was not created as a judge. It has never been a judge. It never will be a judge. That's the innocence of beingness. And it's so simple. It's like, to the mind that's caught in to the nothingness, it seems way beyond, like it's impossibility. But actually, it is a state of mind. It is actuality, and this nothingness has to be seen as nothingness. That's the glee
Thank you.
of it.
This is really profound
That's
because
what you wanted. You said, today will be a profound show.
yeah, because this just blown my question away because to even say that in and out of relationship or any question around it or in and out love has to be a prejudgment of what I know is love and what I know is not love. There is a difference then comes with all the questions of in or out and the differences and that is like as you said is a judgment. How if I say that there are certain qualities is love and certain are not, then that is the fundamental the assumption that is not true in the first place, and all the questions becomes statements really to reinforce this assumption of what I know love is and what I prefer, what is better, and then comes in and out. But just your answer just blow all of that open, and to even know that I don't know what love is, and I don't know that there is any kind of difference in this realm. And let me just step back and pull away all the boxes that I gave to this, then see nothingness as nothingness and everything as everything.
Yeah, that's it. That has to be the most humble experience, to see nothingness as nothingness and everything is everything. And you have to be fearless to even open to that. In other words, fear is an unreal state of mind, and if you have fear, then the mind just gyrates into all kinds of gradations, and it's looking about possibilities. It's still searching and exploring. It doesn't really know anything. Fear is a condition of not knowing God and not knowing self. I remember years ago when Kirsten and I were traveling around, and she's telling me one day, she was telling me about, she said, I'm going to open up about my relationships, and yeah, there was still like a longing around certain relationships. We were down in South America even, and she came one day and she was like, almost like felt guilty. She said, I called so-and-so, that was her ex-relationship. I guess that's a rule, you're not supposed to do that or something. Call ex-flames or whatever, Skype them, as if like that's a no-no. She was like, yeah, and she was exploring the whole thing, and she was telling me about the different relationships she had and the different loves and heartbreaks and everything. And I remember sitting, and I looked at her and I said, you have never loved. And she was like, what did you say? It's almost like that. I said, how dare you? I just told you my love stories, and I spilled the beans on love them. I said, no, you have never loved. And she said, what does that mean? What does that even mean? And I said, well, let's just see. If love is an absolute, and that's what love is. It doesn't come and go. It doesn't change. That's what God is. God is an absolute. Christ is an absolute. Not Jesus the man, but the Christ idea is an absolute. Truth is an absolute. Love is an absolute, and it doesn't come and go, and it doesn't have gradations, and it doesn't have levels. It just is. If love is an absolute, and you're describing all these experiences that had beginnings and endings,
Right.
beginnings and endings, I said, just by definition,
It's not love.
it's not love. And it was just this, we were just, again, looking together at, whoa, what do I think I know? What do I think what have I experienced in terms of the past? And that's there's so much pride in, I know, this I know, this I know, this I know. And then you start to see humbly, I know nothing. Nothing at all of the whole world. I know nothing at all of history. Oh, you can feel the stillness, the emptiness, the peace that comes from that. I don't know. It's better to start off with, I don't know love.
Yes.
Because it's actually part of a gateway, an inroad into a huge, vast experience. But
Yes.
but there's a humbleness even with starting off with, I don't know love, or I do not know. It's actually more accurate and more helpful for the deceived mind to kind of come in, slip in through that.
That's so tricky because that experience when you fall in love, that feels like the best thing you can have in this world, and that just becomes the object of people pursuing. When you're in it, you feel like you have it, and when you're out of it, then that becomes something to yearn for and to achieve. Hopefully, I will have it one day or in the future. But if that comes and goes and have a beginning and end, it's actually really not the thing that we're truly wanting in our heart. Yeah. And to even say that I know what I want love, but it's a worldly love that I experience in a relationship or any kind of relationship, and that, like, it's already many assumptions and distractions already there, and just to peel that away. Yeah.
And that's really going right to the core of it when we start talking about relationships and love. But it's the same as life and death. Like, it's last night and in the wee hours of the morning, Tripod was making sounds that, she's made many sounds in her life, but she was making almost like she was giving out the death wail or something, and moving very slow and seemingly very skinny and not eating her food, and what they sometimes describe animals when they start to go through the dying process, like they sometimes will even go away. For them it's the most natural thing. It's almost like a yielding into all that is. But so in the middle of the night, she's out in her little house out there and just peeked out, and she just kind of looked up at me. She was kind of in a very deep meditative state, almost like in her little house meditating away. It was wee hours in the morning, and then I just waited till I heard a noise from her, and then I went out and scooped her up and brought her in, like a big soft pillow, and just gently stroking, and she just like almost not hardly breathing, just so still. But I could feel it's within, it's the vibrancy, the life, the joy, the presence, everything is totally within. Life does not go out. It doesn't take on breath. I hear all these spiritualities that talk about, just breathe and go to God through the breath and this and this. Life is prior to breath. Life never has taken a breath. Isn't that a lovely idea? Life never has taken a breath. It just opens your mind to a new experience. I always tell that story of listening to Ken Wapnick in one of his lectures, and I was doing the dishes, I think, and somebody on the tape had said, what does the Course say about life on other planets? And Ken, in his typical humorous way, he said, well, the Course says there's no life on this planet. And I stopped in the dishes for a moment. I just so good. So good. There's no life on this planet. And it's not absurd. You actually go inside into an experience within that's so deep inside you that when you actually feel that, you actually feel the vibrancy of eternal life. You actually can sink inward into that vibrancy of course life is eternal, of course God is eternal, of course Christ is eternal, of course I am eternal. You can actually feel it. You can actually look out on the world and then in an instant just see that it's a dream, that there's no life in the dream. It's imagination. It was just my imagination running away with me, running away with your awareness. when really you come back into that eternal feeling. And that's what I was there with Tripod, and we were just having our eternal experience, and it was so great because it didn't have to do with the body, or it didn't have to do with breathing, motion, touch. It's literally prior to all of that, and it's so deep and it's so intimate, but it's not interpersonal. Even between there's no man and cat there. That's gone too. Everything is gone. And it never was there. You in that experience. That's really what it's all about. There's gratitude. There's so much gratitude in that love. It's not a love that you go back on time and you can say, thanks for the memories. There's no, it's not, looking at pieces of memories and bits and pieces and thinking that there was something there, but it's just gratitude that the kingdom of heaven is within and it does not go out, and there is no outcome. No outcome, ever. There's no outcome. This world is causeless, and therefore it doesn't have an outcome. Spirit never comes out. Projection is a hoax. Even this learning the dynamics of the Course and saying, oh, I was projecting my fear or projecting my anger or whatever, that's not really true either. You can't. People get upset when I say there's no manifesting, you can't manifest, but now I'm saying you can't project. You can't. Love doesn't, and you are love, so in the end you have to let go of all these ideas and so-called dynamics and everything. It's not true. It's just glorious.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I feel it. That's what you were saying. We were at a little joining this morning in your room, and it's like something profound. Like a Krishnamurti, David Bohm talk.
There's no outcome.
There's no outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.